Why don't we call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. I've not heard from Trustee Stokebrand, so hopefully she'll hop on shortly. Perhaps she's having issues with Teams. So Bart, can you run through for us tonight's agenda, and then we'll jump right into it.
Sure, yeah. So we just have the one item before us, further discussion of a possible ordinance change to allow the keeping of chickens. I do have a brief presentation which will recap what we discussed last time, as well as some highlights of the survey that was performed. So let me just get into that. Just a quick overview. If you have any questions, feel free to interject or however that works best. Hopefully you're all seeing my screen.
Yep.
I just admitted someone who might be Trustee Stokebrand on the phone, but we'll wait on that. Okay. So, where'd the mouse go? Okay, so just a brief history. Backyard chickens are currently prohibited in the village of Shorewood per code 12917B, which is the animals section of the village code, which just says that no person, business, or entity shall harbor chickens amongst other animals. Back in February of 2023, the village board discussed presenting this for a possible change, and it was assigned to the Community Business Relations Committee. We held our initial discussion on September 18th, 2023, at which point the committee directed staff to pursue additional community engagement to understand whether or not there was a desire for this type of change, and if so, what those concerns might be from people that were not in favor of it. That survey was conducted from September 28th through October 18th. The general benefits, as described in the first meeting, of backyard chickens include urban agriculture, locally sourced homegrown food, pest control, organic fertilizer, and companionship. The downsides were acknowledged to be things such as noise, odor potential, and disease concerns. Of note, we discussed that the backyard chickens were recently permitted in Milwaukee in 2011, River Hills 2011, Fox Point 2018, Glendale 2019, Wauwatosa 2013, and Bayside 2023. So some of our more suburban North Shore neighbors to the north of us have them, as well as some urban areas in Milwaukee and Wauwatosa. Other areas in Wisconsin also have them, including Madison, areas in the Fox Valley, Waukesha, etc. The survey, as I mentioned, was conducted roughly for 3 weeks. It was promoted in the village manager's memo, social media. The Journal Sentinel had an article on it, and we had paper copies at the library as well. We did receive 522 responses, which in my opinion is pretty robust. It's the most responses I've received to a survey in my time here. So I think there is a lot of passion on all sides of the debate, perhaps. The primary question was, should the village of Shorewood update its code to allow for the keeping of backyard chickens under similar circumstances allowed in other communities? As you can see, we have 192 people that responded with a yes, 67% with a maybe, depending on the regulations. 256 with a no, and 7 of those total did not care. That roughly splits the yes and maybe into 49% and the no into 49%. So not an overwhelming response on either side. So we're back here tonight to discuss what some of those concerns might be. So the concerns from the people that voiced concerns, the number one concern was noise. Odor was referenced 78 times, rodents, predators, permitting and enforceability, the treatment of chickens, cleanliness and maintenance, disease, waste disposal, pests, and neighborhood relation/consent. So those were the concerns that people voiced as to whether or not this would be a problem in the village. I did reach out to neighboring communities that have them. And so within the city of Milwaukee, I talked to a manager of Department of Neighborhood Services. He mentioned that he did have initial concerns, particularly about noise and rats and predators in the middle of the night, but all of those, in his opinion, had been unfounded in the past 10 years. And he could not recall an issue where he had to revoke a permit due to such concerns or issues. In Wauwatosa, similarly, the neighborhood services staff enforces this, and she noted that there's been no problems with noise. She credits their requirement for neighborhood consent. So she said, even if there is minimal noise, neighbors are typically expecting that because they've consented to having the chickens. She's also noted that there are no issues with rats with any of their permitted coops. There are issues with rats, perhaps at some unpermitted coops, but once they become permitted, they are enforced better, perhaps. She does say that they actually have more issues with dog waste attracting rats than chickens. In the North Shore Health Department, our director did weigh in. She oversees 4 communities that have chickens. Once again, they are much more suburban in nature, but she said that in her time, she's only had 1 complaint of chickens, and that was in River Hills, where someone's backyard chickens were roaming into their neighbor's yard. So that's the neighboring experience that I reached out and received based on the common concerns that we received in the survey. Lastly here, my last slide here, the next steps that I'm looking for direction on is whether or not the committee needs more information to continue discussion. If not, if the committee's in favor of perhaps drafting an ordinance for the village board to pursue, what types of regulations would be in that ordinance? I've just listed here some common characteristics that that other regulations have. Or lastly, does the committee recommend that the village not pursue the change? So within the packet, I've got a lot more detailed information. This is kind of just an overview of where we're at, but these in my mind are the next steps, options, more information, draft an ordinance, or recommend the village not to pursue such change. So I will exit my presentation.
Oh, Kathy, you're logged in twice.
Sorry.
Okay.
And I believe we are all back. So I will turn it back over to Trustee Kudo.
Okay. Trustee Arndorfer, you have a question?
Yeah, I had a quick clarifying question, just regarding how you're accounting for some of the responses to the survey. A fair number of responses were along the lines of yards or seemed to me. How did you tabulate for those?
So I didn't put those in the concern necessarily because that wasn't something that we can regulate or change. That was more of a circumstance.
Yeah.
I will say that we did receive 76 people that said in general they did not believe our lots were big enough to allow for them, but we really can't regulate or change that. So if that's something that the board agrees with, that'd be something that in my mind would not be a regulatable concern.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Okay, why don't we, I would love to hear from the community. So why don't we open it up to members of the community? If you click the raise your hand icon at the top of the screen, it will number you automatically, as you have all already figured out. So why don't we start with Ellen Ekman? If you could, Bart, this is a name and address.
Correct.
Oh, sure. Correct?
Good.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. If you
Ellen
could,
Ekman.
just give us your name and address. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Ellen Ekman, 2500 East Beverly Road in Shorewood. I came tonight mostly because I was the chair of the community relations. I don't even know if that's what we called it back in 2009 when this first came to our attention. And some of the same issues that were mentioned at the time. It never came out of committee. We voted it down. We had a robust discussion. A large number of people were in the audience. I can't tell you how many because I don't think we counted them. We didn't take minutes. We also had, very interestingly, a large number of people who were not residents of Shorewood who came to argue that Shorewood should have it. The family that brought the issue forward at the time, and this was sort of interesting, it was on behalf of I think she was an elementary age student. And eventually that family, they understood she really wanted chickens and that would really be fun for her to raise chickens, blah, blah. They have since, not immediately, but they have moved out into a rural area out in Jackson, I've been told, because she wanted to pursue a much more appropriate place to have farm animals, including chickens. And so that the urban area wasn't going to work. One of the things, and Bart, I noticed that you asked some of the other residents, other communities. We were very concerned at the time. Madison was one of the ones that had chickens, and they had in their regulations how many feet the hen house had to be from neighbors, and whatever that number was. And there were very, very few lots in Shorewood that would meet that regulation, that the one that the other areas have. And you might check what it is in the areas like River Hills and Glendales, which have much bigger lots. And it turned out that in our meeting, when we were meeting that night, there so few lots as they would be lots that were along Lake Drive. They were the lots that would be large enough to sustain a hen house without getting too close to neighbors on three sides, because you have neighbors in the back and the two sides. So that really weighed heavily on us. And I think you got some of that in the response from people, concerns about neighbors. We weren't so much concerned about rodents, that we were concerned about attracting other animals like coyotes and foxes. So rats did come up in our discussion. It was more about coyotes and foxes. I'm not sure what kind of animals would come after chickens, but that was some of it. So that's about, unless you have other questions of it, that was essentially where we were in 2009 at that committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. Kate Cooper? Is it Katie or Kate? I'm sorry. You're muted, just so you know.
Thank you. Hit the wrong thing. So it's Kate Cooper, 3922 North Maryland. And I am in favor of Shorewood having chickens. I lived in Fox Point when they were going through this as well, and saw a bit of the process. And my feeling then and my feeling now is that I am in favor of my community being allowed to have chickens. Personally, I'm not sure that I would have chickens. So I guess what I want to say is that it's not necessarily going to be a village overrun with chickens. You know, just because people think it's a good idea doesn't mean they're going to run out and get it. I don't think, I was reading through the information, and I believe it's Milwaukee that has like the coop has to be 25 feet away from the other houses. And I was just out back with the dog earlier, and I'm like, maybe I'm 26 feet away from where, from the houses next door. And I feel like I would want my chickens to just have more space than I currently have. But I think it's a great thing for the village to pursue, and I'd be really into seeing it in action.
Okay, thank you very much. Alexa Safer? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alexa Safer. I live at 4022 North Larkin Street. And I am in favor of allowing chickens, only hens, not roosters. I kind of prepared something to read because I get nervous in these kinds of situations.
Yeah, go for it.
So I have a fully fenced in double lot backyard, and there are only garages on the side of it. And I think it would be like a really perfect place to have maybe 3 hens. As a professional gardener, my passion is nature. If the village allowed the keeping of hens, I would love to create a loving home for 3 or 4. Not only do they provide local, reliable eggs, but they're also a wonderful learning opportunity for the entire family. They would also really up my composting game substantially by providing not only with what they take in, but also what they put out. As has already been noted, almost every surrounding municipality allows hens at this time. And many of them, including Whitefish Bay, have similar backyard like lot sizes. City of Milwaukee has similar lot sizes. The survey that we took showed that there was a pretty even number, like opposed and supporting it. But when I was reading through the concerns of those opposed, I felt that most of them could be addressed through proper regulation. As far as proximity, we could require a certain distance from neighboring homes, which would make also for the concern of people, like we would make sure that the yard has to be a certain size in order to be allowed to have them, which would really make it a minimal number in Shorewood that would be allowed to have them. So as far as rodents, we know that people who keep chickens know that you can keep rodents away if you store food properly. And I think there should maybe, I think a lot of the concerns are from people who maybe not real familiar with hens. They don't make nearly as much noise as like my neighbor's dogs do. And we, obviously allow people to have dogs. In addition to these regulations, the village could consider implementing a similar policy as the city of Milwaukee, in which a notification is sent to the property owners whose property directly abuts any potential permit site. This would allow for any property owners who object to ask for a hearing to have their concerns heard, and then the board could decide whether or not to allow the permit. And then, so in closing, I support the keeping of chickens and the right of residents to produce their own food. I would personally love to be able to have that experience here in this house, which I love so much. So thank you.
No problem. You did great. No reason to be nervous. We'll go with Barbara Kylie Miller, please.
Thanks, Eric. I am against the chickens in Shorewood, and just as a reminder, no matter what the communities to our north or south do, Shorewood is the densest community in the state. We have a lot of people in our little 1.5 square miles, which includes parkland, and so I think that might be an issue. My husband walks 1.5 miles or an hour and a half every day, and more than once he's run into loose chickens on Downer Avenue, just south of Capitol. So even the best of intentions, chickens, they want to go places. So, they're confined to a small space, which may not be the healthiest option for them. One thing I don't like about the whole neighbor permission hearing thing that Alexa just mentioned is that then that sets us up for neighbors to have conflicts with each other. It was one thing when we had the bee ordinance. Bees don't take up a lot of space. And so again, it was really just a matter of, are you or your child or family member allergic to bees? Is that going to be an issue? Whereas, I read through a lot of the survey comments that you had in your meeting packet and agreed with a lot of the issues that people express their concerns about the cleanliness, the noise, it really is an effort to clean every day. And I'm not sure if after the initial, enthusiasm for getting the chickens wanes, if everybody's going to realize that they need to keep that up every single day to avoid problems. I am familiar with chickens. I have a cousin in northern Michigan with a small farm, and she really does have free-range chickens on her property. And so confining chickens to a much smaller lot, as we have in Shorewood, really is not quite, the same thing. It's not the same quality of life for hens that we would like to have. I say keep the chickens confined to Costco and Metro Market. And I agree with Alan Eckman that very few of our lots, our homes would qualify in size to have chickens in the backyard. I know this is an issue that will come up when on the Plan Commission we start discussing accessory dwelling units. Again, how far from neighboring properties, what's appropriate. So, Shorewood is rather unique in our closeness with neighbors. We want to be, great neighbors to everybody around us. And this seems like you say up a conflict, and with almost 50% of the survey respondents against this idea, I would hate to see us move too far forward with this idea. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Did I miss, did you give your address in the beginning, Barbara? Or do we have
I
that?
thought you guys knew it by heart by now. It's 40,
We have to have it for the record.
I know. It's 4051 North Downer Avenue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wickland.
Yeah, thanks. Let me see if I can share my screen here real quick. Barbara, I was hoping you and I were on the same side of an issue for once. I don't think so.
Come on to the light side, Dan.
One of these ones we're going to agree with. So hold on. Let me just.
Bart, is Dan able to share? Or Bart,
Yeah,
are you
it
able
should-
to share what Dan has?
No, Bart, let me just do this. Let me try this right now. Take yours down.
Wait, Bart's got. So Bart's got his shared.
Yeah, but then I can't click through them. Does this
Go
work?
ahead, Dan.
Can see
Chick-
it.
Yep. There's a chicken and an egg and some more.
And
some
chickens in
shit.
Shorewood?
Here we go. So address, name and address, Mr. Wickland.
And do you see my family now?
Yes, can see your family.
And there we go. Okay, so Dan Wickland, 2212 East Menlo Boulevard. This is my wonderful family. Okay, and there is opposition to this, and opposition even exists with Barbara, like Barbara just said, and Barbara, I respect that. Also, this fine lady in my family picture is probably also opposed to these. She doesn't know I'm in this meeting right now, and she would probably try to pull me away if she knew that, because she's opposed probably as well. And the survey showed that some people are opposed to this, right? 51% said yes, maybe don't care. I kind of like the don't care ones. 49% of people said no. But one thing about this survey, Bart, I really want chickens, clearly, but I had no clue the survey was taking place. And I'm not blaming you at all, but I'm not on Facebook really. Now and then I go on there, I see what Barbara posted for this when I finally looked. But in general, I had no clue, and I'm really passionate about this. So as we all know, there's a lot of people that had a lot of comments that were included. But this is the list of things that all Shorewood residents agree on that I made. That's it.
We have to go. I was going to say we have to go faster, Dan. We're running out of time.
I'm going faster. Now, this isn't outside the box thinking, right? Here's kind of our region here. There's Shorewood in yellow. We're neutral right now on chickens because I think we're heading towards them. Whitefish Bay doesn't like them. Brown deer doesn't like them. We get that. We don't have to be like them because look at everybody else. I know Barbara said we don't have to be like everybody else, but there's chickens allowed pretty much everywhere around here except our little island. And I think Bart pointed out from these neighboring communities, from the feedback he got from the people enforcing the regulations, a lot of the concerns that were brought up are actually not really concerns that have materialized. I have experience in this. This is my now 13-year-old son, Carl, when he was 4. That's us when we lived in Milwaukee. That's my house with the flags in the background there. Barbara, this chicken is actually roaming on my neighbor's property. They actually really liked it. The chickens kind of picked out the bugs in people's gardens. It isn't really a nuisance. It looks like a little rabbit running around, and there's Carl chasing with his tractor. So I have done this. And density wasn't an issue. You can see my lot back there, the measurements of it. It was 30 by 26 in the backyard. That's a very small lot. All my neighbors were the same. And if you look, a typical Milwaukee lot in that neighborhood right there, which isn't even the smallest lots in Milwaukee, the lot itself is 3,600 square feet. A resident earlier said they live on Larkin. It's funny, I had looked on Larkin. A typical lot on Larkin in that area is about 4,800 square feet. So even though we are a very dense community, right? We have a lot of duplexes, we have a lot of apartments. We square footage wise, compared to some of these other residential neighborhoods in Milwaukee, we have a lot of room. Humane treatment was brought up. I mean, this is what it looks like where eggs typically come from, right? This is what a backyard coop looks like. When you talk about humane treatment for the animals and the space they need, backyard coops give chickens plenty of space. Odor and waste. I know that was brought up, but odor and waste is how you care for your coop. When we had a coop, we cleaned it out on a regular basis. 4 chickens that didn't even need that much cleaning. It was a regular clean space for the chickens, and the waste went where all other waste goes. I think Bart brought up that neighboring communities had more problems with rats from dog poop and dog waste. That's very true. Dog poop and dog waste are not controlled. They're all over people's yards. This is something that is actually contained in the coop and can be cleaned up. Pets and rodents. We have bird feeders everywhere. That's a rat right there. I didn't make that picture myself. I stole that from somebody, but that is a rat going into a bird feeder. It is food that is set out for other animals, like bird feeders, that attract these rodents and pests. So someone said earlier, as long as you keep the food stored properly, rodents and pests won't come in there. That's a big deal as well. Predators. That's not Carl the coyote. That's from actually Illinois, but that's a coyote going after somebody's dog. There are predators, and they do attack animals. Chickens do go in their coop at night. The coop is closed at night, so predators actually cannot get in there. The only time a predator could get a chicken is when it's wandering around. And although I would be very upset if a hawk or a coyote or some other predator came and did get my chicken, the attachment to chicken isn't always the same as a family dog. So chickens can be replaced, I guess, as can dogs, but I wouldn't be quite as concerned about the predators. Enforceability, those of you know our village hall, they're great at enforcing things. We have the ability to do it. I think Bart has addressed some of these issues and what he talked about. And so I don't see that as an issue. People worried about that. Ultimately, this is about happiness. Chickens are not about having cheaper eggs. As one of the first beekeepers in Milwaukee, again, why my wife doesn't like bees either, getting bees doesn't make for cheaper honey. It's an expensive hobby, but it's really nice to be able to create your own eggs, create your own things. Compost piles, things like that, those all attract pests. When you can take your food waste, feed it in an enclosed area to your chickens and make eggs out of it, it's amazing. There's a famous poet that wrote, "My favorite eggs are brown. Maybe the white ones put a smile on you. Some people may be grumpy, but chickens can make them happy too." That person is on this call who this was written for. He knows who he is. But in general, chickens are amazing. Shorewood would be great. We may not even get chickens. I have to get this past you guys and then my wife, which is an even bigger obstacle. But either way, I think this would be a great addition to Shorewood. Thank you.
Okay, we are low on time. Village board meeting starts in 2 minutes. So, Joanne, I would love to hear your position.
Yes, hi, thank you. My name is Joanne Reardon. I live at 4042 North Richland Court. I'm a new resident of Shorewood, and this is actually the first time that I've ever been on one of these calls. So
they're always this much fun. So thank you for joining us.
Sounds like
welcome.
Everyone here knows each other well. So I will keep it brief given the amount of time. So I recently moved to Shorewood from Seattle, Washington, and I have some friends in Glendale who have chickens, and I was talking with them shortly after I moved, and they shared that Shorewood does not allow chickens. And I was very surprised given that Seattle, which is more densely populated, but also has a lot of similar values in the desire to locally source food and to bring things like chickens to the neighborhood. Seattle allows it, but Shorewood does not. I lived in a neighborhood that was had similarly sized lots as you see in Shorewood, and not once in my 5 years living there was I ever bothered by the neighbor's chickens. So I just wanted to join the call today to get my first chance at being part of this process here in Shorewood, and then also to share that I am in favor of chickens.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else? Anybody else at all that wants to be heard? Okay, then we'll close public comment at 7:29. Thank you again to everybody for joining. I know it's a Monday night and people have much better and or cooler things to do than to sit in a village committee meeting. Bart, so this is agendized as a further discussion of a possible ordinance. We are now at the beginning of the village board meeting. So I think what I'd like to do is hear just briefly from the other committee members, and then, I don't see where we are after that. Let's just go quickly around the horn. Let's do this as fast as we can. So, Jim, you just unmuted yourself, so you volunteered to go first.
Yeah, I would like to move it to the full board.
Okay. Concise. Kathy?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I understand. I'm glad to see the turnout, and I was glad to see all the responses to the survey. Without a greater count towards allowing chickens, since it seems more to be against than for, I'm inclined to not take this out of committee and to vote no. It doesn't seem to me that we have enough people that really feel strongly that they want it, and we have at least as many or more that definitely don't want it. And I think that it's
totally disagree with that characterization of the result of that survey. I mean, there's.
I'm sorry. Can I just finish my?
Wait, Jim. Let her finish, and then we can discuss, please.
I I think that without more support for it, it's hard to go for it. I think it's fair to say, oh, everybody else is doing it, why don't we do it? Well, I think having lived in Shorewood for 25 years, I can say that just because other communities are doing it is not necessarily a reason that it's good for Shorewood. And I don't see enough people, I see too many people opposing it. And I personally have concerns for, I think it seems like a really nice hobby idea, but bringing agriculture in this way into the village, I grew up on a farm. The thought of the chickens in the backyard in such a small space, with people who I wonder about the welfare of the chickens. So who would check on, if it gets below 0, you've got one hen sitting in an uninsulated chicken coop in the backyard. I have problems with that. And another residents have expressed concerns to me about the, raising chickens as pets. And that's my concern too. Thank you.
Okay. Jim, follow up?
Yeah, I mean, there's a narrow but clear majority in favor of either considering it or approving it. So I don't understand the debate on the numbers there. I would be interested in getting perspective from staff in terms of any issues with affordability. To other points, we have not seen, major issues raised by other communities where this has been put into place with, neighborhood configurations that are at least as dense as ours. So I would be in favor of moving it forward.
Okay. Toya, are you here to tell us that we are out of time or we're in trouble? So this is kind of where I'm at. Okay, thank you. Thank you for passively telling me that. This is kind of where I'm at. I personally don't want chickens in Shorewood. I don't think that, the lot sizes are conducive. I don't think that, very many people would do it. And I do have serious concerns about the consent portion of this. What I will say is, and what I would like to do is have Bart put together an ordinance for this, draft an ordinance for our first meeting in December, so that we can vote yes or no. I am at this moment, frankly, inclined to send it to the board for consideration, even though I personally am against it. But the numbers are close enough. There certainly are people who support this in the village, and I don't necessarily want to stand in the way, even though I'm not one of them. I'm not with you, Mr. Wickland. But so Bart, what I'd like to do, and hopefully my committee members will agree with me, I can get them together on this, is to put together the ordinance using both Milwaukee and Wauwatosa as guides, seeing as how they're basically identical anyways, for presentation to us in our next community and business relations meeting, so that we can either vote up or down on sending it on to the board.
I agree.
Is that something that we can agree on, Trustee Arndorfer?
Yes.
Okay, I read your lips and you said I'm happy to do it, so thank you, Bart. Okay, then that's where we'll end this. My lip reading prowess notwithstanding. Trustee Stokebrand.
I move to adjourn.
Trustee Arndorfer. All right, all those in favor of adjourning at 7:35.
Aye.
The chicken ordinance lives to see another day. So
All right.
Yes,
thank you, everybody.
thank you guys. Thank you,
Thank
thank
you
you,
all.
thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
See you
If
guys.
you all
See you guys
want
at
to go
committee.
and jump onto the next
Yes, ma'am.
link.
Sorry.
Is gonna do.
On the way.
Okay.
Thank you.